Black CEO treated like a thief in his own hotel minutes. Later, he fired everyone involved. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Thief in my hotel. Her voice cracked through the air like glass-shattering marble. Phones lifted, cameras blinked awake, and in the middle of the chaos, David Cole didn't move. He stood at the entrance of the Cole Grand, the five-star crown of his own empire. White shirt, no tie, calm eyes that had seen this scene before. The woman shouting at him, Victoria Hale, wore a red blazer sharp enough to cut. Her finger was inches from his chest, and the crowd behind her waited silent, hungry, certain they were watching a criminal. "Security," she barked. "Hold him till the police arrive." The guard hesitated. One look at David, steady, composed, and something in the man's grip faltered. A camera crew across the street zoomed in, the red light blinking. Live. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to David. Victoria folded her arms. "You thought you could sneak in here? Dressed like that?" Her tone wasn't just authority, it was assumption. David's jaw tightened once. "I have a meeting." "With who exactly?" He glanced toward the golden sign behind her. "The owner." A ripple of laughter from the bystanders. Someone whispered, "He's lying." Another voice said, "I saw him earlier, probably a delivery guy." Victoria smirked. "We've had this scam before. They pretend to be guests, flash fake cards. Not today." She reached out and snatched his ID from his hand. "Let's see what name you stole this time." David didn't react. Only the smallest flicker crossed his eyes, recognition, not fear. He'd lived this moment before, 20 years earlier, in a different lobby, when another manager called him boy and told him to leave the lounge for real guests only. Back then, he walked away. Today, he wouldn't. Victoria turned to the cameras. "Record this," she told the press crew. "This man tried to access restricted areas." "Ma'am," the guard started quietly. "He said his name is Cole." Victoria snapped, "And I said he's lying." David finally spoke, voice low, even. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Her smile faltered, just a hair. "Do what?" He looked her dead in the eye. "Announce on live television that you've just accused the owner of being a thief." Silence hit harder than any shout. The guard froze. The cameraman lowered his lens, uncertain. And for the first time, Victoria's certainty cracked. David adjusted his sleeve, calm as marble. "Now," he said softly. "Shall we start again?" The city noise bled back in horns, footsteps, the buzz of realization. And somewhere behind the lobby glass, a young employee named Elena Ruiz whispered to her coworker, "He's not lying, that's David Cole." Outside, the crowd didn't know it yet, but in less than 10 minutes, the entire staff they were watching would be gone. New York, 9:08 a.m. The marble lobby of the Cole Grand was no longer quiet. Phones were raised. The buzz of whispers became a storm. Victoria Hale stood taller, feeding off the noise. "This man tried to enter the executive elevator," she said, loud enough for every camera to hear. "He's refusing to leave." Her words landed like stones. David Cole stayed still, hands visible, voice calm. "I asked for a meeting confirmation," he said evenly. "You asked to sneak upstairs," she shot back. The guard beside them shifted uneasily, glancing at the ID in her hand. A guest near the front whispered, "He's way too calm for a thief." Another murmured, "Or he knows something we don't." Victoria turned, flashing her corporate badge. "This is private property. I'm the manager here." David's eyes didn't move from hers. Not for long. The crowd reacted half gasp, half disbelief. Victoria frowned, mistaking poise for arrogance. "Sir, I'm calling the police," she said, fishing her phone from her blazer pocket. Behind her, a bellhop froze mid-step, eyes flicking between the two. Elena Ruiz, still at the desk, typed something quickly into the reservation system. Her lips parted when the screen flashed. VIP owner access, David Cole. She swallowed hard, whispering, "Oh my God." But Victoria was already dialing. Security control? It's Victoria. I've detained a suspicious male in the main lobby. Oh, David exhaled once, the sound steady, almost gentle. In his ear, the faint buzz of a Bluetooth earpiece clicked alive. A quiet voice came through. Protocol 7 confirmed. Cameras synced. He didn't smile, just replied, "Stand by." 20 years earlier, he'd stood in another lobby, same accusation, different city. Back then, he had no power, no allies, just the burn of humiliation and the echo of laughter. He remembered thinking, if I ever own something like this, no one will be treated that way again. The crowd parted slightly as the building's head of security entered. Thomas Briggs, 45, uniform crisp, posture uncertain. "What's the issue?" he asked. Victoria gestured sharply. "Caught this man pretending to be a guest. Possible fraud." Briggs looked at David, then at the ID in her hand. "He's calm," Briggs said quietly. "You sure?" Victoria rolled her eyes. "I've worked here 10 years. I know a con when I see one." David finally spoke, voice firm. "Then I suggest you look again." He reached into his pocket slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a sleek black card. Victoria scoffed. "A fake membership doesn't prove anything." David turned the card toward the security camera. The embossed logo shimmered under the lobby lights. Cole Grand Holdings. And just beneath it, in silver print, David E. Cole, Chief Executive Officer. The guard blinked. Briggs stepped back. Elena whispered, "It's real." But Victoria didn't see it yet. She was too busy performing for the watching crowd. "Nice prop," she sneered. "You people will print anything these days." Her words hung there, raw, audible. David's expression didn't change. He looked past her to the glass doors, where the reflection showed half the lobby filming, half frozen in silence. Then he spoke quietly, a final warning wrapped in grace. "Be careful, Miss Hale. The last thing you want is to make this moment your legacy." A beat of silence followed, heavy, uncertain, electric. The sound of sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Victoria turned, triumphant, unaware those sirens weren't coming for him, but for her. And in that moment, everyone watching began to feel it. Something had shifted. The calm man in the white shirt was not the threat. He was the reckoning. 9:11 a.m. The police sirens grew louder outside the revolving doors. Inside, Victoria Hale straightened her blazer like a soldier before a medal ceremony. She believed she'd just saved the hotel's reputation. She had no idea she was seconds from ending her own career. Guests were now openly filming. A mother whispered to her teenage son, "Watch how he doesn't even raise his voice." The boy nodded, eyes wide. David Cole stood in the same spot where she'd accused him minutes earlier, posture steady, expression unreadable. Elena Ruiz finally stepped away from the front desk. Her phone trembled in her hand. "Miss Hale," she began softly, "his name is in the system. Executive tier. Owner access." Victoria snapped. "Stay out of this, Elena." "But it's right here." "I said stay out of this." Her voice cracked across the marble like a whip. Every head in the lobby turned. David looked at Elena, one quiet nod. That was all it took for her to keep going. "I'm sorry, but this is wrong," she said louder this time. "He's not a trespasser, he's the CEO. The system even shows your badge linked to his approval network." The words landed like thunder. Victoria froze. Briggs, the head of security, looked down at his tablet, verifying the feed from corporate servers. Then his voice came low and cautious. "She's right. He has full authorization." The silence that followed was unbearable, the kind that stretches long enough for truth to settle in. David finally exhaled, slow and deliberate. "Thank you, Elena," he said, calm as steel. He turned back to Victoria, whose eyes darted between him and the gathering crowd. "You accused me of theft," he said evenly. "You confiscated my ID. You called the police, all in front of witnesses." Victoria tried to regain her footing. You came in unannounced, no security, no notice. Anyone would have done the same." David tilted his head slightly. "Anyone?" The weight of that single word made her falter. He took a single step forward. "Do you call the police every time a black guest checks in, or just when the cameras are rolling?" Her mouth opened, then closed again. No answer. A murmur rippled through the crowd, low, uneasy, undeniable. Elena's voice cut through it. "I'm sending the incident log to corporate." Victoria spun around. "You'll regret that." "Ugh." Elena didn't blink. "So will you." David raised his phone to his ear. "Nia," he said quietly, A clear female voice answered instantly. "Yes, Mr. Cole. Live audit is active." "Good," he replied. "Make sure legal receives every second of footage from the lobby feed." "Already done," Nia said. "Would you like me to begin termination protocol?" David's chaza met Victoria's. Her confidence was crumbling, breath shallow, palms trembling. "Yes," he said simply. Briggs' earpiece buzzed. His eyes widened as a red warning flashed across his security tablet. "Employee access revoked. Victoria Hale." The color drained from her face. Her badge flickered once, then went dead. What is this?" she stammered. Elena looked at her screen. "Corporate lockout," she whispered. "Effective immediately." David didn't gloat. He didn't move closer. He just said, quietly but clear enough for the cameras to catch every syllable, "Power doesn't need volume, it needs proof." Oh, the crowd began to applaud slowly, unsure at first, then building. Some filmed. Others just watched in silence, their own reflections mirrored in the glass walls of the lobby. Outside, the sirens faded. Inside, justice had already arrived. David turned toward the doors. "Mr. Briggs," he said, "escort Miss Hale out respectfully, and remind the staff what respect actually means." "Yes, sir," Briggs replied, his voice low with both duty and shame. As Victoria was led away, she caught her reflection in the polished glass. Not as the manager of a five-star hotel, but as the woman who forgot what dignity looked like. David paused at the threshold, sunlight spilling across his shoulders. Behind him, Elena exhaled, the tension leaving her frame. He didn't look back. He didn't need to, because in 9 minutes, he'd turned humiliation into history. 9:16 a.m. The hotel lobby that once buzzed with whispers was now a stage of disbelief. Security escorted Victoria Hale through the revolving doors while guests parted like waves, their phones still recording. Outside, the police cruiser arrived too late for the wrong arrest. David Cole stood near the concierge desk, motionless, composed. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Every click of the revolving door echoed like a closing chapter. Briggs, the head of security, approached cautiously. "Mr. Cole, sir, I didn't know." David's voice was even, almost kind. "I believe you, Thomas, but not knowing isn't the same as doing right." Briggs lowered his eyes. "Understood, sir." Elena, still behind the desk, whispered to him. "Corporate's on the line. Legal wants to confirm your statement for record." David shook his head. "They'll have it soon enough. Every second is recorded." He stepped toward the center of the lobby, the same spot where Victoria had accused him of theft. The same floor now reflected his silhouette like a mirror. Cameras clicked again, but the energy was different this time. No longer spectacle witness. A reporter from a local channel stepped forward. "Mr. Cole, would you like to comment on what just happened?" He turned slightly toward her, his tone still level. "I came here unannounced to see how guests were treated. Now I know." The woman lowered her mic, unsure what to say next. David continued, "When leadership fails, it doesn't echo, it multiplies. The culture of a place is what you allow in silence." His words rippled through the lobby. Even the staff who had stayed quiet earlier looked down, suddenly aware of how much they'd watched without acting. David glanced toward Elena. "You did the right thing," he said softly. She smiled nervously. "It didn't feel like it, sir." He nodded. Courage never does at first. At that moment, his phone vibrated once Nia calling. "Go ahead," he said. "Media is already circulating footage, sir. Corporate's PR wants your directive." David looked around the chandeliers, the marble, the crowd that had turned from judges to witnesses. "Tell them to let it run," he said. "The truth doesn't need editing." He ended the call and faced the lobby again. "Attention, everyone," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "This place bears my name, and from this moment on it will reflect its purpose, service, not suspicion." "Oh." He paused, scanning the faces before him, some guilty, some relieved, all silent. "To the guests who witnessed this," he continued, "I apologize, not as a CEO, but as a man who refuses to let prejudice hide behind policy." A murmur of acknowledgement moved through the crowd. A woman whispered, "That's class." Another said, "That's what leadership looks like." Briggs nodded once, as if to himself, then to David. "Sir, would you like me to clear the lobby?" David shook his head. "No. Let them stay. Let them see how justice restores quiet." The last flash of a camera popped. Outside, the police car drove away, lights dim. Inside, stillness settled heavy, cleansing. Elena stepped forward again. "Mr. Cole, what will happen to the others who sided with her?" David's gaze softened, but his answer was firm. "They'll be retrained or released. Justice isn't revenge, it's correction." "Oh." He began to walk toward the private elevator, passing the spot where Victoria's voice had once filled the air. Now, only the faint hum of the building remained. As the elevator doors opened, he turned slightly to the staff. "Respect," he said, "should never depend on recognition." The doors slid shut with a whisper. For the first time that morning, the Cole Grand felt what true leadership sounded like. Silence, steady, and absolute. And for everyone who'd witnessed it, that silence said more than any speech ever could. 9:22 a.m. The elevator doors closed behind David Cole, sealing the noise of the lobby outside. Inside, the air was still. Reflections of gold and glass shimmered across his calm expression. He didn't smile. He didn't sigh. He just breathed slowly, deliberately. For 9 minutes, he'd stood in humiliation. For the rest of the morning, his silence would echo across every floor of his empire. As the elevator rose, his phone buzzed. "Nia," he said softly. Her voice was clear and composed, as always. "Sir, legal has finalized the dismissals. HR is already scheduling replacement interviews. The footage has over 200,000 views online. 3 major outlets are running the story." David nodded to himself. "Let them. Would you like a statement drafted?" "No," he replied. "Let the footage speak. People need to see what unchecked arrogance looks like." The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor. 2 assistants stood waiting, both frozen as they saw his expression. "Sir, is everything—" one began. He raised a hand gently. "Cancel the morning meetings. Call a full staff assembly at noon. Every department." They exchanged quick glances. "Yes, sir." David walked down the hall, past portraits of former CEOs, each face a reminder of what power used to look like. He paused in front of a photo of his father, the company's founder, smiling proudly beside the hotel's first blueprint. For a moment, memory slipped through the calm. He remembered his father's voice. "Son, someday they'll test your patience more than your profit. That's when they find out who's really in charge." He inhaled slowly, grounding himself in that truth. Across the city, the video continued to spread, a white manager shouting, a black man standing still, and then the reveal that rewrote the narrative. Hashtags bloomed, number the owner, number Cole Grand moment, number dignity over drama. Back in his office, the skyline stretched beyond the glass wall, New York glinting in the morning Sunday. Nia entered quietly, tablet in hand. "You're trending worldwide, sir, but there's also backlash." David didn't look surprised. "Of course there is. People always resist the mirror before they face it." She hesitated. "Do you want us to remove the comments?" He turned toward her, expression unwavering. "No, leave them. Let people argue. That's how change starts." He walked to his desk, where a leather folder weighted Victoria Hale's personnel file, already sealed for termination. David opened it, reading through the last performance review. "She was good at her job," he murmured. Nia nodded carefully. "Efficient, ambitious, but she saw people as categories, not individuals." David closed the folder. "Then she never belonged in hospitality." He looked out over the city again. "Have HR send Elena Ruiz an email. Promote her to Assistant Guest Relations Manager." Nia smiled slightly. "She'll cry when she reads it." "She earned it," he said simply. "Integrity deserves visibility." For a moment, neither spoke. Then David asked almost quietly, "How long do you think it takes for a place to unlearn prejudice?" Nia tilted her head. "Depends on who's teaching." A faint smile ghosted across his face. "Then class begins at noon." He turned back toward the window, sunlight painting his reflection against the skyline. Below him, the Cole Grand stood like a monument still gleaming, but not untouchable. And for the first time that morning, David allowed himself one deep breath of quiet victory, because justice had spoken. And it sounded exactly like silence. 12 p.m. sharp. The ballroom lights of the Cole Grand glowed soft gold, spilling across a sea of anxious faces. Every department head, concierge, housekeeper, and front desk associate had been summoned. Phones were silenced. Laughter didn't exist. The man who owned the building was about to speak. David Cole walked in without announcement. No entourage, no security. Just his calm presence and the faint sound of leather shoes against marble, the same floor where he'd been humiliated that morning. The same man, but the air around him felt entirely different. A murmur passed through the room. That's him. He stood at the center, hands clasped behind his back. When he finally spoke, his voice carried no anger, only weight. This morning I walked into my own hotel. I wasn't recognized. That's not the problem. I was profiled, judged, and accused. That is the problem. Every word landed heavy. No one looked away. Some of you watched. Some stayed silent. And silence, he said, is not neutrality, it's permission. And a ripple of guilt moved through the crowd, subtle but visible. Elena Ruiz, standing near the back, kept her chin up. She wasn't hiding. She had nothing to hide. David continued, hospitality isn't marble floors or five-star menus. It's how you treat people when you think no one important is watching. He paused, letting the words breathe. In that moment, everyone realized he had been watching all along. The HR director, pale and nervous, stepped forward. Mr. Cole, all terminations have been processed. New interim managers have. David lifted a hand. We'll discuss structure later. Today isn't about punishment. It's about vision. He walked toward the projector at the back of the room. With a single tap, the morning's footage appeared on the giant screen. Gasps filled the air. There it was, Victoria Hale shouting, the guards restraining him, the silent crowd watching. Then the reveal, then the silence. He didn't narrate. He didn't explain. He just let them see what he saw. When the video ended, he spoke again, quieter now, but even more cutting. That's 9 minutes of how fast dignity can disappear, and how fast we can bring it back if we choose to. He turned to Elena. You chose. Elena froze, dozens of eyes now on her. David gave a small nod. Courage doesn't require permission. It just requires one person to remember what's right. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then steady. Elena's eyes glistened, though she tried to stay composed. David let the sound rise, then fade. Starting today, every Cole Grand employee will undergo a new program. Not a seminar, a standard. If you can't treat every guest like they belong, you don't belong here. Heads nodded. Some in shame, some in respect. He looked across the room, young, old, black, white, immigrant, native-born, all wearing the same uniform. This place will no longer judge by appearance. The only color that matters here, he said, is the color of professionalism. A quiet, collective exhale filled the room. He turned toward the HR director once more. Make sure Miss Ruiz receives her promotion by end of day, and full scholarship for management training. That's how we build loyalty, not with fear, but with fairness. Then he closed his folder. Meeting dismissed. No applause this time, just stillness, the kind that meant they understood. As people began to leave, Elena caught his eye one last time. He didn't say a word, but his nod told her everything. You didn't just save your job. You helped rebuild its purpose. David lingered in the empty hall, watching sunlight scatter through crystal chandeliers. 9 minutes of humiliation had become a masterclass in leadership. And for everyone who had doubted him that morning, his silence had become their lesson. By sunset, the Cole Grand had turned into a headline. News vans lined the block, reporters framed against the glass facade where it all began. The clip had passed 5 million views. But inside the hotel, there was no celebration, only reflection. David Cole sat alone in the corner of his office, the city burning gold beyond the windows. A laptop played one of the broadcasts. The reporter's voice was measured, reverent. What began as a misunderstanding quickly became a defining moment in corporate accountability. A black CEO, mistaken for a trespasser in his own hotel, chose restraint over retaliation. He paused the screen. His reflection overlapped with the frozen frame Victoria Hale mid-accusation. He whispered to himself, restraint isn't weakness, it's proof of control. A knock at the door. Nia stepped in, tablet in hand. Media requests are non-stop. CNN, Bloomberg, BBC, everyone wants a statement. David leaned back. If I speak too soon, it becomes a spectacle. If I speak right, it becomes a standard. Nia smiled faintly. You're already a standard, sir. She hesitated before continuing. Victoria sent a letter. HR forwarded it to me. David raised an eyebrow. Go on. She apologized publicly, actually. Said she acted out of fear, not hate. The internet's divided about it. He nodded slowly. Fear and hate wear the same clothes sometimes. He didn't open the letter, just slid it aside unread. Downstairs, the lobby buzzed differently, now quieter, more respectful. Elena Ruiz was at the front desk, handling guests with new confidence. Every few minutes, someone stopped to whisper, "You were brave this morning." She smiled awkwardly, replying only, "I just told the truth." David watched her through the office feed. A simple act of integrity, replaying in real time. He turned to Nia. "Remind corporate. Training begins next week. And rename it." "Rename it?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "Call it the Cole Principle." Nia tapped the note quickly. "What's the motto, sir?" He thought for a moment, then said softly, "Dignity first. Always." As Nia left, David stood by the window, watching dusk settle over the skyline. The city lights flickered on one by one like quiet applause. His phone vibrated an incoming call from his mentor, Harold Simmons, founder of a rival hotel chain. David answered. "Harold." "Son," the older man chuckled, "you just turned a PR disaster into a masterclass. Everyone's talking about it." David replied evenly, "That's not the goal." "I know," Harold said. "But you gave people something rare, a black man who didn't have to shout to be heard." David looked down at the street below, where reporters still gathered outside his doors. "They'll move on," he said. "Maybe," Harold answered, "but the lesson won't. You reminded the world that grace can be louder than rage." When the call ended, David closed his eyes. Memories drifted back, that 19-year-old version of himself, thrown out of a lounge for looking out of place. He'd vowed never to forget that feeling. Now he understood why. He reached for his phone and typed a short internal memo addressed to all staff. Leadership isn't about titles. It's about tone. Every guest you greet is a mirror of this brand and of yourself. Treat them with dignity, not when it's convenient, but when it costs you comfort. He hit send. Outside, the last streak of sunlight faded into night. Inside, the quiet hum of the hotel resumed calm, renewed, changed. The Cole Grand had survived its public reckoning, and in doing so, it had finally earned its name. David took one last look at the city before turning off the lights. Tomorrow would bring new guests, new challenges, new glances of judgment. But tonight, he rested in one truth. Power hadn't shouted. It had spoken, and the whole world listened. 7:02 a.m. The rain over Manhattan came gentle, like the city itself was exhaling. Inside the Cole Grand, the lobby smelled of coffee, polished marble, and quiet redemption. Everything looked the same except the energy. Staff greeted guests differently now. Eyes held contact longer. Voices softened. Elena Ruiz, freshly promoted, stood behind the desk. Uniform, crisp, posture proud. She didn't just check people in, she made them feel seen. A journalist lingered near the fountain, murmuring into a camera. Yesterday, this hotel made global news. Today, it's making history. David Cole walked in unnoticed at first, just as he'd done the morning before. No entourage, no cameras. Only this time, no one stopped him. Every employee nodded respectfully as he passed. He nodded back. The same bellhop who had looked away yesterday now straightened his jacket and said, "Good morning, Mr. Cole." David smiled faintly. "Morning, Chris. Keep that energy." "Yes, sir." As he approached the reception desk, Elena looked up, startled but happy. "Mr. Cole, I didn't expect." He raised a hand lightly. "No titles today, Elena. Just David." Her eyes widened. "David, then. Welcome home." That word home landed deeper than she realized. He looked around the lobby. "It feels different." "It is," she said. "Everyone's trying harder. You changed something." He shook his head gently. "No, we did. The cameras just happened to catch it." At that moment, two guests entered, a middle-aged black couple dressed elegantly, luggage in tow. They hesitated at the front, exchanging a wary glance with staff. Elena stepped forward immediately, voice warm. "Welcome to the Cole Grand. May I check you in?" The woman smiled, visibly relieved. "We weren't sure if this was the right place for us." David, standing nearby, turned slightly. "It is now." "Oh." The guests didn't recognize him, but they caught something in his tone. Something that carried both authority and grace. As Elena handed over their room keys, she whispered, "Enjoy your stay, and thank you for trusting us." The woman touched her hand. "Thank you for making us feel like we belong." When they left, Elena turned to David, eyes glistening. "That felt good." He nodded. "That's what hospitality should feel like, mutual respect." Oh, across the lobby, the morning news played on a muted screen. A headline scrolled across the ticker. The Cole Grand CEO's graceful response sparks national conversation on bias in business. David caught his reflection in the glass. He looked the same, but he wasn't. Nia arrived, tablet in hand, heels clicking softly. "Morning, sir." Or, "David." He smiled. "Depends on the context." She grinned. "Well, context says you're trending again. People are calling it the Cole effect." And he exhaled quietly. "Trends fade. Principles stay." She leaned closer. "There's something else. Victoria Hale requested a meeting. In person." David didn't react right away. He turned toward the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. "Here?" "Yes. She said she wants to apologize face to face." He considered it for a long moment, then said simply, "Let her come." Nia hesitated. "You're sure?" He nodded once. "Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's ownership." "Oh." Elena looked up from the desk, curious. "She's coming back?" David's tone was steady. "Everyone deserves a chance to understand what they broke." The elevator dinged softly in the distance, an echo of the morning before. Outside, the rain eased, leaving the city washed and new. David glanced at his watch. 7:33 a.m. Another day, another test. He straightened his cuffs, calm as ever. "Let's see," he said quietly, "if she's learned what silence taught her." And as the doors opened once again, the man who had once been accused of theft prepared to meet the woman who had taken something far greater, his dignity, and was about to see what it looked like when he gave it back. 10:04 a.m. The rain had cleared, leaving the streets outside the Cole Grand shining like mirrors. Inside, the hum of the lobby was steady, professional, careful, new. Every employee knew who was coming. Victoria Hale stepped through the revolving doors slowly, not with the arrogance she once wore like perfume, but with a quiet caution that came from knowing the room remembered her. Gone was the red blazer. Today, she wore gray, simple, clean, almost humble. She clutched a thin folder and walked toward the reception desk where Elena stood. "Miss Hale," Elena said, voice steady but not unkind. Victoria nodded faintly. I have an appointment with Mr. Cole." Elena checked her tablet. "He's expecting you. This way, please." As they walked past the same marble floor where everything had fallen apart, Victoria caught her reflection. Small, uncertain, human. She whispered under her breath, "How did it all go so wrong so fast?" The elevator ride felt longer than it was. No words, just the soft hum of the city rising beneath them. When the doors opened, David Cole was already waiting in the glass-walled boardroom. He didn't stand. He didn't offer a handshake. He simply gestured toward the seat across from him. "Victoria," he said calmly, "you wanted to see me." She sat slowly, folding her hands to keep them from trembling. "I owe you an apology," she began. He tilted his head. "For what you said, or for what you believed?" The question froze her mid-breath. I believed I was protecting the hotel," she said quietly. "You were protecting your bias," he replied, voice low but precise. "The difference is what cost you your job." Victoria looked down. "I understand that now. Watching the footage, seeing myself shout like that." She stopped, searching for words. "I didn't recognize that woman." David leaned back slightly. "You did. You just never had to meet her in public before." Her eyes glistened. "You have every right to hate me." "I don't," he said. "Hate is easy. Accountability isn't." She looked up, surprised. "Then why did you agree to see me?" He studied her for a long moment before answering. "Because when someone breaks something valuable like trust, sometimes they need to see what it takes to rebuild it." He stood, walking toward the window overlooking the skyline. "The hotel survived. So did your reputation. It's your choice what happens next." She blinked. "My reputation?" He nodded. "You issued a public apology. That took something. But apology isn't repair. Repair requires repetition." Victoria swallowed. "What do you want me to do?" He turned back to her, voice calm but heavy. "Use your story. Train others. Show them how easy it is to lose everything in 60 seconds of ignorance." She frowned slightly. "You're offering me a role?" "Not here," he clarified. "At the foundation, I'm building the Cole Initiative. It funds diversity education for hospitality programs. I need people who've seen both sides of the mirror." For a moment, she couldn't speak. "You'd trust me with that?" He met her gaze. "No, but I'll give you a chance to earn it." Tears welled, but she didn't wipe them. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't deserve it." David's tone softened just enough. "That's why it means something." A knock at the door. Nia entered briefly. "Mr. Cole, your noon briefing is in 15. He nodded. "Thank you." Victoria stood to leave, clutching the folder tighter. At the door, she turned. "I thought you'd humiliate me." David's reply came quiet, firm. "You already did that yourself. I just gave you the mirror." She paused, nodded once, and left without another word. As the door clicked shut, David looked at the empty chair she'd occupied. Then, softly to himself, power doesn't punish, it teaches. Outside, the city glittered like a second chance. And somewhere deep inside the Cole Grand, a lesson had just begun. 2 weeks later, the name The Cole Initiative shimmered across the screen of every major news outlet. What began as a viral scandal had transformed into a movement. Its mission: to train hospitality workers around the world in the art of dignity. The press conference took place in the same ballroom where David Cole once faced silence and guilt. Now it was filled with reporters, cameras, and quiet anticipation. A banner hung behind the podium. "Dignity first, always." David stepped up to the microphone. No music, no dramatics, just presence. The room quieted instantly. 2 weeks ago, a mistake happened in this hotel, he began. But it wasn't a single person's mistake. It was a reflection of something deeper: how quick we are to judge, and how slow we are to listen. He scanned the room, faces expectant, curious, skeptical. "So today we start something new. The Cole Initiative will partner with universities and hospitality chains to build a different kind of training, one that teaches awareness before apology, respect before regret." Murmurs of approval moved through the crowd. The words weren't just elegant, they were deliberate. He wasn't selling an idea, he was building a legacy. A reporter from NBC raised her hand. "Mr. Cole, many see this as an attempt to rebuild your company's image. Is this personal or public relations?" David smiled faintly. "When dignity becomes good PR, that's when the world is truly upside down. This isn't about recovery, it's about responsibility." Another reporter asked, "Will Miss Hale be involved?" David didn't hesitate. "Yes, she's joining as a field trainer. Because true reform isn't built by saints, it's led by those who've learned the cost of ignorance." Flashbulbs erupted. But David's tone never changed, calm, centered, cinematic. He gestured toward the side of the stage, and Victoria Hale appeared. A quiet gasp spread through the audience. She didn't wear designer red this time, just a navy suit, modest and unassuming. Her eyes met his briefly. He gave a single nod. She stepped to the microphone, voice steady but low. "I made a mistake that hurt more than one man. It hurt what this industry stands for. And if you'll allow me, I intend to spend every day teaching others not to repeat it." Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then genuine. David watched her speak, not with pride but with purpose. When she finished, she stepped aside. He took the mic again. "Redemption isn't a performance," he said. "It's consistency." The sentence hung in the air like a benediction. Reporters wrote it down as if it were scripture. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Nia approached. "Congratulations, sir. You just turned the worst day of your life into a curriculum." David chuckled softly. "It wasn't the worst day, just the loudest." She smirked. "And now?" "Now," he said, "we make the silence louder." Outside, the steps of the Cole Grand were filled with people taking photos of the new plaque beside the entrance. The Cole Initiative, Dignity First, always. Elena Ruiz stood among them, phone in hand, smiling through tears. She'd received her scholarship letter that morning. The caption under her post read, "He turned humiliation into hope." Inside, David remained alone in the ballroom, lights dimming around him. He looked up at the banner one last time, the same words that had carried him through it all. "Dignity first, always." And as the cameras packed up and the noise faded, he finally allowed himself to close his eyes, knowing that his silence had grown into something far louder than anger. A movement built from grace. 3 months later, the Cole Initiative had spread far beyond New York. Posters now hung in hotel lobbies from Atlanta to Amsterdam. Hospitality begins with humanity. The world had moved on, but the Cole Grand had not forgotten. Inside his office, David Cole reviewed the quarterly reports. Numbers looked good, better than ever, but it wasn't the profits that made him pause. It was the letters, stacks of them, printed from emails sent by employees and guests alike. One read, "I work the front desk in Houston. After your story, I realized I've done the same thing to people who didn't look the part. I can't change the past, but I'm changing how I see the present." David traced the words with his thumb. That was the real currency, not money, but awareness. Nia walked in quietly, a coffee in one hand and a small envelope in the other. "Morning, sir. This came for you, International Post." He glanced up. "From where?" "London, a hotel that joined the program last week." "Okay." He opened it, unfolding a handwritten note. "We used your training last month. A guest was wrongly profiled this time, by accident. Instead of anger, the manager quoted you, 'Correct quietly, learn loudly. Thank you for giving us language for grace.'" David smiled, a small, rare curve of pride. "Grace has a grammar," he murmured. Nia tilted her head. "Sir, people just needed the vocabulary." Outside his window, the skyline stretched like a promise. Rain clouds rolled over Manhattan again, just as they had that morning months ago. But this time, the sound felt different, not cleansing, but grounding. His phone buzzed. A message from Victoria Hale. "Arrived safely in Nairobi. First training session done. 42 new managers signed up. Thank you for trusting me with this." He read it twice, then set the phone down. Trust wasn't something he gave easily, but it was what made change possible. Elena Ruiz knocked gently. "Sir, I wanted to thank you again for the scholarship. I've been accepted to the Cornell Hospitality Program." David looked up, genuinely smiling. "You earned it, Elena. I just made sure the world saw it." She hesitated, then said, "It's strange, isn't it? How one awful morning turned into all this." He nodded. "That's the power of a mirror. If you survive what it shows you, you get to change the reflection." She blinked, letting the weight of that settle. "Will you ever stop reminding people of that day?" He shook his head slowly. "Not until the world stops repeating it." When she left, David turned back to the window. Rain streaked down the glass, blurring the skyline into water and light. He remembered his father's words again. "They'll test your patience more than your profit." He smiled softly. "You were right, Dad." Nia reappeared, tablet in hand. "Sir, one more thing, the United Nations wants you to speak at their Global Ethics in Business Summit next month." David chuckled. "I used to get kicked out of rooms like that." Nia grinned. "Now they build them around you." He stood, sliding his jacket on, voice quiet but sure. "Then let's make sure they hear the message power with grace, not fear." As he walked toward the elevator, a small crowd of new trainees entered the lobby, diverse, eager, unaware they were stepping into history. Elena greeted them with the same words he once spoke. Respect should never depend on recognition. And from across the floor, David caught her eye, nodded once proud, present, and still calm. The world had changed because he refused to shout back. Because sometimes, leadership isn't the echo. It's the silence that follows and stays. 6 months later, spring sunlight spilled through the glass facade of the Cole Grand, painting gold across the lobby floor. The hotel was busier than ever, not because of luxury, but because of legacy. Guests came for rooms. They stayed for what the place stood for. Near the fountain, a new plaque gleamed. "This building stands for dignity. Founded by David E. Cole, 2025. David walked through the doors quietly, wearing the same white shirt he'd worn that morning months ago, the one that had once made people assume he didn't belong. Now, it was part of the story. A small group of new hires waited by the reception desk, notebooks in hand, eyes wide with nervous pride. Elena Ruiz, now assistant manager, led the orientation. Her voice was steady, confident. "This isn't just a hotel, it's a promise. People don't remember how soft the sheets were, they remember how they were treated." David stood back, unseen, listening with a faint smile. He didn't interrupt. She didn't need him to. She was the proof that his silence had grown voices. When the session ended, Elena noticed him and hurried over. "David, you didn't tell me you were visiting today." He shrugged lightly. "I wanted to see the place through your eyes." Well," she said, gesturing around the lobby, "it finally feels like yours." He shook his head gently. "No, it feels like ours." Just then, Nia entered with a folder. "Sir, you'll want to see this." It was the first official report from the Cole Initiative. 42 countries. Overdose. 000 participants. Bias incident reports down by 60% across all affiliated hotels. He scanned the numbers, then closed the folder. Not bad for 9 minutes of silence, he said quietly. Nia smiled. The world listened, sir. Across the lobby, a young bellhop helped an elderly guest with her suitcase. She thanked him softly. He replied, "It's my pleasure, ma'am." Simple words, but they echoed louder than applause. David turned toward the fountain, the very spot where he had once stood accused. The marble was still the same, but the energy had changed completely. He stood there for a long moment, listening to the water, to the distant chatter, to the rhythm of peace restored. His mind drifted back to that morning, the shouting, the flash of cameras, the sting of public humiliation. He'd thought it was his lowest moment. Now, he realized it was the beginning of everything. Victoria Hale entered quietly through the side doors. She had returned from another training tour, South Africa this time. When she saw him, she stopped, hand over her heart. "Mr. Cole," she said softly, "I wanted you to know we've reached our 100th class, and not one participant walked out unchanged." David nodded. "Then the work is doing its job." Victoria hesitated, then asked, "Do you forgive me, truly?" He looked at her for a long second, eyes calm, voice low. "Forgiveness isn't a decision, Victoria. It's a practice. Every day I remember what happened and choose not to let it happen again." She smiled faintly, tears catching the light. "Then that's enough." She left, and the lobby resumed its calm rhythm. Elena approached again, holding 2 coffees. "One for you," she said. "Black, no sugar, right?" He chuckled. "Still remembering the details, huh?" "Always," she said. "It's the small things that make people feel seen." He looked around once more, the staff, the guests, the quiet confidence in every movement. This was the world he wanted to build, one where dignity wasn't demanded, it was designed. Outside, a group of tourists stopped to take pictures by the plaque. A little boy pointed at the name engraved there. "Who's David E. Cole?" he asked. His mother smiled. "The man who taught a hotel how to listen." Inside, David heard the faint laughter, the sound of life continuing, and for the first time in a long time, he let himself breathe fully. He whispered almost to himself, "Power doesn't shout, it corrects." Ugh. Then he turned, walking toward the elevator, the same doors that once closed on chaos, now closing on peace. And as the lights dimmed behind him, the Cole Grand stood tall and quiet, a monument not to wealth, but to what happens when justice learns how to whisper.